Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's focus for Saturday, December the 17th, 2022 at 3:34 p.m. Central Time. Today's focus, two things. Now, I know it's Saturday afternoon. I know that we're supposed to be doing the Today's Focus podcast series. We're supposed to be doing these episodes earlier in the morning. I know we haven't really accomplished that yet because there's been lots of things causing technical problems with us being able to pull that off. Hopefully, we'll get that fixed soon and we can get back to some type of a morning time for this. So it's Saturday afternoon. So let's go with the current time and let me try to paint a picture, a scenario that I want you to think about. It's Saturday afternoon. And if you were to sit down right now, this Saturday afternoon, wherever you may be, now I don't know when you're going to listen to this, but we're broadcasting live on a Saturday afternoon. Let's imagine it's a Saturday afternoon, or you can imagine it's a Friday night, Friday morning, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You can imagine really any time you want. But since it's Saturday afternoon, imagine if you were to sit down right now and God said, you can ask me for two things. For two things. What two things would you ask for? And do you think they would be beneficial to your spiritual life or detrimental to your spiritual life? What two things would you ask for, and would they be detrimental or beneficial to your spiritual life? What two things would you ask for if God basically said, right now, you can ask me for two things? What would you ask for? And if you really, and whatever those two things are, just don't even give it much thought. I would ask for these two things. Then I want you to think, what would be the long-term consequences of those two things? Would they be beneficial or would they be detrimental? So I think a lot of times we ask for something and we don't really think about, well, what would be the long-term consequences? There's always unintended consequences. There's always unintended consequences. And I know we don't always think that way, but I think anytime if God was to answer my prayer in the affirmative for this, short term, it may be beneficial. Short term, it may be great. But what would be the long-term consequences? What would be the unintended consequences? Just a thought. It's not the primary thought, but now that I'm thinking about it, I think it's an interesting thing to consider. How many times if God would have answered our prayer in the affirmative, it would have had short-term benefits, but it would have been detrimental to our spiritual life long-term. That's an interesting concept to try to unpack and process, but that's not our focus today. Two things. What two things would you ask God for right now at this very moment? If you grabbed a piece of paper and said, here are the two things I would ask for, what would they be? Now, the reason I'm asking this question is because early this morning, don't even know what time it was, I was listening to something and they read, I think, 2 or 3 verses from Proverbs chapter 30. Proverbs chapter 30. And as soon as I read the verses, as soon as they read the verses and I was listening, I'm like, wow, where's my Bible? Where's my Bible? So I grabbed my Bible and I opened it up to Proverbs chapter 30. And I've read the verses a number of times today, just thinking about it. So I thought today's focus, I would hand you these verses from Proverbs chapter 30, where the writer of Proverbs seems to ask God for two things. Listen carefully. Proverbs chapter 30, verse 7. I'm going to read these verses from a number of translations, or at least from two different translations. Are you ready? Proverbs chapter 30, verse 7. Here we go. It begins, two things. There's the two things. Two things I ask of you. Today's focus, two things. What two things would you ask God for right now? Whatever time, whatever day, whenever you hear this, what two things would you ask God for? And what would be the consequences of those two things? Now, let's see what two things the writer of Proverbs asked for. Two things I ask of you. don't deny them to me before I die. Now, so he's very emphatic here. The writer is very emphatic. Please, 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 please give me these two things and do not deny me these two things before I die. He believes these two things is of the utmost importance. What could be so important that you would look to God and say, please, please give me these two things before I die? What would those two things be? What would they be? Here we go. Keep falsehood and deceitful words far from me. So number one, keep falsehood and deceitful words far from me. Keep deceit. Keep false things far from me. Keep me away from false things. Now, this is kind of an interesting phrase. Do you think the writer of Proverbs here, and do we have... these are the words of Agur, A-G-U-R. So that's who I'm assuming is the author of this. We could get into all the issues with Proverbs 30 or trying to understand them exactly. But we'll just go with the writer of Proverbs, the person writing this. We won't go into identifying him and all that. We may do that for another time. But for now, for today's focus, remember, it's supposed to be about 15 minutes, so I have to limit what we can dig into. Here we go. Two things. Don't deny me. Don't deny me. I have to have these two things. And the first thing is keep falsehood and deceitful words far from me. Now, that's an interesting request. Is he concerned with, hey, keep these words from me because I'm easily deceived? Is his concern is keep these from me so that I won't be misled, so that I won't be deceived? Or is he saying, keep this from me in the words of is he saying, keep this from me because I'm easily deceived? Or is he saying, keep it from me so that I don't spread it? In other words, keep me from spreading it. Keep me from speaking it. Another translation has it written this way. Two things have I required of thee. Deny me them not before I die. Remove far from me vanity and lies. So they go with vanity and lies. The King James goes with vanity and lies. This translation, instead of vanity and lies, falsehood and deceitful words. So why do you think he is so concerned? The writer here is so concerned with these things being kept far from him. Do you think he's worried? Like, keep it from me, so because he doesn't want to share it, he doesn't want to speak it, or is he keep it from me because I'm easily deceived by it? What do you think? Why do you think he is so concerned? If you could only ask two things, would this be on your top two? Would this be in your top two? Hey, keep falsehood, keep lies from me, keep it far from me. Like that just seems like an interesting. I don't know if that would be even in my top 100. That's an interesting one. All right, there's much we could say about that, but here's the second one, which I think is pretty. Now, the first one, I'm not quite sure. The second one, I think, is somewhat brilliant. Here we go. So keep falsehood and deceit from me. That's number one. Number two, give me neither poverty nor wealth. So number one, keep falsehood and deceitful words from me. And number two, do not give me poverty nor wealth. Hey, I don't want to be rich. I don't want to be poor. Keep falsehood and lies from me. Keep that from me. And don't let me be rich and don't let me be poor. That is an interesting, I don't know if I would have ever thought about that kind of, hey, don't give me riches. Don't give me poverty. Now, this is fascinating because I think sometimes we may ask for money. We may not want to be poor, but we may want to be rich. But he seems to realize that there are dangers in both. Look what he says here. Feed me with the food I need, otherwise I might have too much and deny you, saying, who is the Lord? Or I might have nothing and still profaning the name of my God. So it seems that his concern here is, wait. If I was to ask for riches, I could end up denying God, saying, who is God? Because I would have everything that I need. I don't need God. Who is God? I don't even need to worry about God. Look, I've got everything. So he's thinking of the unintended consequences. If God was to give him wealth, there would be unintended consequences. He would deny God. At the same time, if he was to have poverty, the unintended consequences is, as he puts it, I might steal and profane the name of God. So in other words, if I had wealth, I will forget God. And if I have poverty, I will steal and profane the name of God. So there seems to be these two things amount to this. Number one, let's and you may want to write these down today because this is just fascinating to me. Keep lies and falsehood from me. Just keep lies, falsehood, keep that all from me. And I don't know, is he worried about his own being deceived? Is he worried about him speaking those things? It just seems it seems at least on the surface somewhat like, why is that? The second one is rather profound to me, though. Hey, here's what I need. Don't make me rich. Don't make me poor. Just give me exactly what I need. Because if I get rich, unintended consequence, I'm going to forget you. And if I'm poor, unintended consequence, I'm going to steal. So it seems like that he asks for two things, and he's asking for two things because he's not looking necessarily at the immediate situation. He's looking at the long term, right? He's looking further out. In other words, keep lies and falsehood from me. Now, we don't know exactly why he's asking for that, but we could at least speculate that in his mind, hey, if lies and falsehood, if it's not kept from me down the road, I will be deceived by it. I will repeat it. I will share it. Keep me from it so that I'm not influenced by it and I don't influence others with it. So he's looking long term. He's not worried about where he is right now. He's worried about where he will be. And he knows that falsehood and lies exist and that he, for whatever reason, is either very vulnerable to that or is one that could start speaking it. So he's trying to stay away from that. And then he's like, look, don't give me wealth. Don't give me poverty. Because if I have wealth, I'm going to forget you. And if I have poverty, I'm going to profane your name. That is fascinating to me. My original thought was just looking at the request, but now I'm kind of, I guess what at least for me, thinking this through today, it's making me think about how we ask God for things. Do we ask with any thought, any forethought on the unintended consequences of us getting what we're asking for? I think we tend to see the now, we see the moment, we see the need, we have the feeling, and then we just want something to happen then, and we have no foresight to where it's going to lead. And here, in Proverbs 30, we have someone's like, okay, look, before I die, I need two things. You got to keep lying from me. You got to keep deceit from me. Now, I don't know exactly why he is so concerned about that. To me, it's either a fear of being deceived or a fear of being the one doing the deceiving. And then it's just this brilliant, like, hey, look, this is what I need. This is what I need. Let me throw this out. This is just theoretical. This is just I'm just hypothesis here. I wonder sometimes. I wonder sometimes if we don't really think about the unintended consequences of answered prayer. And I guess the specific thing I'm thinking about is when it comes to, say, politics. I wonder sometimes if we pray for this kind of government, we need Republicans or we need conservatives or we need, whatever we want to say. I wonder if we ever think of the unintended consequences. What happens? Maybe if we got that, then we ultimately forget God and we just basically create a world off a political ideology, a moral system, and we really forget God. So in other words, we may get that, but it could actually be detrimental to the spiritual life of the church and of Christianity because we really forget God, we forget the spiritual, and we just become political and ideological. Is there an unintended consequence? But if we don't get that, and we got, say, a different kind of government that is hostile and hates Christianity, I wonder then if we could find ourselves becoming bitter and angry and becoming like we would handle ourselves in an ungodly manner. In other words, I think for every prayer that we ask, there's always, what are the unintended consequences? It just seems fascinating that he seems to understand that poverty or wealth are going to have negative unintended consequences, so he doesn't ask for either. Just let me, as he puts it, feed me with the food I need. Feed me with the food I need. Another translation has it as, feed me with the food convenient for me. Do we need more insight to the possible unintended consequences of our prayers? That's a fascinating concept to me. And I've never given it much thought. It's just when I heard these, and I've read these verses multiple times, but when I heard them read today, I was like, wow, wait a minute. This is fascinating. So at first I was just thinking, okay, he asked for these two things. What two things would I ask for compared to what he asked for? But then as I'm thinking about it more, and that's the whole point of today's focus, is for us to focus on one thing, contemplate it, really meditate on it. The more I am convinced that I don't always have that foresight. Hey, God, I need this. Oh, wait. Okay, God didn't give this to me, or God did. I don't think about what's going to happen if I get it. What's going to happen if it's denied? What are the unintended consequences? How do you read Proverbs 30, 7 through 8? What are your thoughts on these very fascinating verses today? Proverbs 30, verses 7 through 8. I would love to hear your thoughts today on today's focus. Please email me, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. Today's focus, two things. Proverbs chapter 30, verses 7 through 8. Two things have I required of thee. Deny me them not before I die. Remove far from me vanity and lies. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me, lest I be full and deny thee and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and take the name of my God in vain.